to deploy supply chain technologies. So now we've got over half of companies are saying that cloud is what they're going to be using. And I think one of the other telling figures there is only 10% of people are saying that they're not going to use cloud. So really you've got 90% of people there that are not anti-cloud. So the shift in the market from what our customers are saying is a move towards cloud as the primary method. So what's in it for us? So there's what we've seen, especially being part of QAD, is that there's been a gradual shift and acceptance that ERP can be deployed through the cloud, but advanced planning systems like demand planning, production planning, people are thinking, well, it's quite niche, why do I need to be in the cloud? You know, what's in it for me? So I'm just going to go through a few of the key areas and the benefits really. So the first one is if we think about expertise and where the IT expertise sits in an organisation, and typically it sits within the ERP. So, and rightly so, because ERP is the mission critical system. So that's where the bulk of the IT expertise sits. So APS can be a bit of a sort of poor relation. And when you implement a planning solution, you'll typically get that support from IT while it's being implemented. But after it's gone live, they tend to drift away and carry on, go back to the ERP. So if you move to the cloud for your planning solutions, what that means is that you've got that dedicated expertise from the vendor to support your ongoing initiatives, and you don't have to rely on the internal IT who are more aligned to the cloud, to the ERP. And that links into this point about priority. And as I said, APS tends to sit below the ERP in terms of priority. So what you can end up with is being stuck on an old version of the software. And by going to the cloud, you can ensure that the cloud vendor manages all of that upgrade process, or setting up test environments and managing server rights and new sets of programs and all that stuff. All of that can be passed out to the vendor, and you don't have to rely on your internal IT for it. So in terms of scalability, if you've ever done an internal project in-house, you have to make a decision at the start of the project about what the size of the server is going to be, and you're sort of stuck with that for the next 5 or 10 or 15 years. And you have to really make a decision there about the size of the business and what it's likely to grow to and how you're going to roll it out, because you're going to be stuck with that server. And the cloud's different because it's like this tap, you know, you can turn it on when you want to roll it out to more divisions, or where if you acquire another company and you suddenly need much more computer processing power. The cloud is much more scalable because it's just completely flexible. If we need a bigger server, we can add that. If we need more memory, more storage, it's much more flexible and scalable than an on-premise solution where you're stuck with the server that you buy at the start of the project. And we talked about upgrades, and when you install a planning system, if you don't upgrade it to the latest version, then you're not benefiting from the best set of tools that are available. So a good planning system vendor will have their own R&D department that are busy developing all these new tools and new ways of working. And if you're stuck on a 5-year-old version of the software, then your planning department are not going to be benefiting from those latest set of tools to enable them to produce better forecasts, more accurate plans, manage their inventory better. So, you know, we really want our planning team to be focusing on adding value, and one of the best ways of doing that is giving them the best set of tools possible. And by using the cloud, we can make sure that we are on the latest version because all that is outsourced to the vendor. And the final point is really about the speed of processing. So, you know, computer power, computers speed up over time. So again, if we're stuck on this old server then we're not going to be benefiting from the increases in speed, in processing power. And we're expecting people, they're using tablets and the internet and want everything in real time. And then we expect them to use this old server where they're waiting for batch processes to run and overnight processes. When really, if we could dedicate more and better servers and processing power, then they can have that data in real time for much quicker decision making. So I think there's a lot there, benefits there in terms of moving to the cloud that directly affect planning systems and supply chain planning departments. So the question always comes up about costs when we talk about cloud. Cloud's more expensive. Well, cloud and on-premise are two very different deployment methods. And basically what's included in the cloud is very different to what's included in an on-premise solution. And the best way of describing this is really looking at the analogy of an iceberg. And if we look at the sort of tip of the iceberg that we can see, and we compare the software licenses from an on-premise solution with the subscription fee from a cloud, then the subscription fee is typically higher than the software licenses. So that's what leads people to think that cloud's more expensive than on-premise. However, if we look below the surface and at the hidden costs that are involved in an on-premise solution, then you've got all these other things that are usually buried somewhere in the organisation that are never taken into account. So the operating system, all the IT people to monitor it, maintain it, doing all the upgrades, replacing the server every 5 years. So all these hidden costs mean that what you actually see on the surface, the 10%, is only actually around 10% of the overall cost. Whereas with cloud, that subscription fee contains much more of the total cost. So that actually represents about 70% of the overall cost of the project. So with cloud, those fees are actually much more visible, and therefore they're much more manageable when you're doing a cloud type project. So you're not going to get any of these hidden and nasty surprises that you can get from an on-premise solution. So cloud has a lot of myths around it. I'm hoping that these words are going to appear as I press the button. So I'm just going to go through a few of the sort of the key words that we hear and some of the myths. Yeah, good. So the first one's around security. So all my data's floating around up in the air, and we've heard about all these data breaches. So people are worried about security, but if you are using a very good cloud vendor, then they will be certified to something called SSAE 16, which is the highest level of auditing compliance for a data center. And that guarantees the safety and security of your data, that all the controls are in place within that data center to look after your data. And there are not many internal IT organizations that will be certified to that level of standard. But a good data center and a good cloud vendor will be certified to that level of compliance. So in terms of performance, again, people thinking that their system's all mixed up with everybody else's and they're using, they're all sharing the same software. Well, that can be the case if you use what's called a multi-tenant cloud environment. Then you will be sharing the same software with other companies, and it can be affected. There can be performance implications. But if you use what's known as a single tenant solution, then that means that software is dedicated to you and your business. So you won't be affected by any of those performance issues. You're not sharing that software with anybody else. So cost, we've already talked about this. So when we consider cost, we have to think about what are those visible costs and what are the hidden costs, and how the total cost of the solution actually compares to the on-premise solution, and not just what we can see in terms of the subscription fees and the software licenses.